care, nutritionist, certified raw food chef, author of raw recipes on the go. As I know, you're an avid dancer, right? You create and curate the wonderful Wizards of Raw Food Extravaganza and the Natural Mystic Fair. You're a certified Kundalini yoga instructor. And to top it all off, just to do the everyday running around stuff, you're a mother and a grandmother.
Yes.
Let me give you a round of applause. Let me give you a round of applause for that. That is amazing.
Sometimes when I hear it, I'm like, wow. And some of those things, you know, I don't do so much anymore, like the net hair, but
right.
Certainly was a part of my life for over 35 years.
Right.
And another book, which is called The Journey to Selffulness. And
okay.
That is a self-discovery book.
Right.
And books you can get on Kindle and Amazon.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, there you go. People can. We'll talk about your links at the end as well, so people know where to get your books and where your restaurant is if they haven't heard about it, which I think most people have, but still, you know, and so people can stay in contact with this amazing woman. So we're going to be talking to Tasilli, who is such an amazing. I mean, we met in Mexico officially. I mean, obviously I've known of you for many years, probably high and by type of thing, but we officially met in Tulum, right? A few years ago during COVID.
Yes.
And we sat down and we had such a great conversation, and you took me way back to where it all started. And we can touch on some of that today, but you know, just to kick things off, this is Tambor Party. What are your feelings about Tambor? I mean, because you've been coming for Tambor for such a long time.
When it was it 959?
Yes, 595 North Avenue. Wow.
Yes, that was when I was first introduced to Tambor. Although I had heard about it, I experienced it at 595.
Right.
And as I said, it's magical music medicine.
Right.
It's just what we need for our soul. You know,
right. Yes.
As spiritual beings on the planet, you know, music feeds the spirit.
Right.
And it has to be music that is truly healing.
Yes.
It's going to energize, it's going to uplift, it's going to inspire, it's going to put you in a trance. And I experienced all of that.
Right.
Come to Tambor.
Right. Amazing. So it's really good to hear everyone's perspective on Tambor and what they feel about it. But, you know, I think we all fall into the spiritual place when we talk about Tambor, and people go into prayer, or go somewhere else, you know, when they're on the dance floor.
And it's a given. It's like, you know, the sun is going to rise.
Right.
Now, we may not see it because of the clouds, but we know it's there.
Right.
And so coming to Tambor, we know it's there.
Yes.
Period.
Yes.
We're going to get everything we need.
Right. Oh, excellent. That's great. Well, you know, the next party is on June the 1st. So at the same spot, Future Atlanta. So, you know, we've traveled around quite a bit in this city for the last 15 years. So the next one's going to be on June the 1st, you know, and as always, you are so graciously invited to come and bless the dance floor. Now, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
You outdance all the young'uns. Literally, and without a word of a lie. From beginning to end. What's your secret?
Love.
Yes?
Love. Love is the secret of everything I do. You know, it's that. It's absolutely that. You know, what else is there really at the end of the day and the
right.
beginning of the day? It's love. People
Yeah.
ask me, what secret of my food, and I say love is the main ingredient.
Right.
And they look like, yeah, right. And I'm like, yeah, right.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
I love life.
Mm-hmm.
I love my life in particular, and I love the energy that is exuded through music.
Yeah.
And I was remembering when I was a little girl, and I grew up in Houston, Texas, until the age of 5, and it was a block away from the high school, Jack High School, and this was at the end of segregation in the South. So where we were, it was the black community. It was Third Ward, and the big bands, the marching bands were the thing. And every day, Stan, I would remember hearing the drums.
Right. Yeah.
When we moved to California, I missed my family and I missed the drums.
Right.
So it, is something that's really been a part of my life, literally my whole life. So hearing the drums, feeling the drums, because you get into that bass beat that like permeates all the bullshit in life.
Right. Right. Let's put it to the side.
Able to ride
Right.
the wave
Yes.
of the music, and then I get to that plateau where it's this burst of love. It's really orgasmic.
Right. Right.
It's feeling the love. It goes throughout my whole body, my whole being, from my tip of my locks to the tip of my toes. And I'll have my eyes closed. I'm completely in the zone. I get off on the other people enjoying themselves.
Right. Yeah, I mean.
And then I don't even have to have anybody else dancing. I'm dancing in the grocery store.
I know, I've seen you. Bumping into you anywhere. Cultivate, you'll be dancing everywhere. Oh, this is a great track. Oh, let me start dancing,
Yes. Well, for us as people, for most melanated people, we celebrate the Most High through movement.
Through movement, that's right. Yes, definitely.
And so when you or some of the other magical medicinal healer DJs get on, start spinning, it's a vibe where, like I said, you heal us.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when you talk about love, because love is such a powerful force. It's the most powerful force, the highest vibration, the most powerful force. And some people get confused with when they talk about vibrations, and they think the dark side, the evil person, is more powerful than the person with love. But that is totally a misconception. It's like when you put love, like you said, in your food, in your art form, in your passion, that takes you much further than someone who tries to put dark forces into their passion and take people out in order for them to go forward in life. And there's only so far that they can go before they'll fall back, and even if they do make it to a place where they have tons of riches and money and wealth, inside they're totally unhappy. That's when they'll turn to drugs, alcohol, depression.
Yes, there's some miserable people living in Memphis.
Right. Yes.
Miserable people living in poverty. I think the key to what you're saying is that everything is a vibrational frequency, right? Because from the darkness come the light. Light is heat,
right?
And heat waves or vibes, vibrational frequency. Everything is composed of that, and then what is the intention behind it? And if one is just sending love, that permeates all things. If one is energy, then not only do they have to fuel their own energy from a place of negativity, which has to be sustained because love is the natural state of being, but then they have to work on permeating other people's states of being. So that's like overtime, work overtime.
Yes.
And while there are some people who are successful with being negative, you know, the good always outweighs the bad.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And so it's for us, especially in this day and time, and I would really say in any day and time,
Mm-hmm.
but especially now with so much uncertainty in the world, you know, that we focus on what we want to create.
Yes.
Rather than live in fear.
Right.
And that's what fifth dimensional consciousness is, you know, to create your reality.
Right.
And knowingly, intentionally,
Mm-hmm.
rather than create it for you.
Right, exactly. That is so true. I mean, creating your reality is something that people feel that it's just for other people. They see other people in situations of fame and success, and they think, "Oh, that's just for them. That's not for me."
Right.
But you know, you're denying by a person not pushing themselves forward. They deny the world of their passion and what they have to offer in the world. You know.
Their own, They, if folks cast shade, they're denying their own shine.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's so true. So let's move on a bit, because how do you navigate your time, because you do so much in the community for yourself and for people. How do you navigate? How do you get it all done? I mean, what does a typical day for Tasilli look like?
I move in grace. Let me say that.
Right.
I get up anywhere between 5 and 6.
Yeah.
And depending on what is required of the day. As of the past few months, I've actually been in the restaurant, in the kitchen, making grab and go wraps. Occasionally, I've even had to be behind the counter because of staff. It's gotten better, so I'm primarily now doing the wholesale orders and, you know, our grab and go things, as I said before. So on the days that I do that, I will get up, I'll do my prayer, stretches, wash up, of course, and then run downstairs. If I am not required to do that, I'll take longer with my meditation.
Right.
You know, usually answer phone calls. I try to always stretch every day, even if it's my
That's good.
stretch, which is the salute to the 7 directions.
Yeah.
It's something that allows me to get in a really good stretch, but I try to put in at least 3 times a week, some 30 to an hour session of yoga for myself.
That's great.
And so I might go get on the inversion table. I might jump on the trampoline. You know, I've always been a very active person.
Yeah.
So, you know, doing that is like really important to get my spirits going, my energy up, and so on.
Right.
And then I forgot to say, it's really as soon as I open my eyes and I get up, I will drink 32 ounces of water.
Oh, beautiful. So important. So important. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like right at the beginning. I try to do a gallon a day, so I try to get in those 32 at least 4 times a day. So that my body gets a chance to flush, because drinking water is an internal shower.
Right.
You know, some people hate water, you know, and only drink soda and those types of things. But you have to ask yourself, would you take a shower and juice? You know,
that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's important that we flush out internally. So I do that. I typically don't eat anything until around between 11 and 1.
Okay.
And lately, I've been primarily being a liquiditarian the past week and a half. While I've had a little bit, like maybe 1%, 2% of actual solid foods, I've primarily been doing liquids just as a detox for myself right now.
Right.
It's hard to fast in a restaurant.
Because you always have to taste, right? What does this taste like? What does that taste like?
Exactly.
Right.
And we've gotten, growth is always the thing, right? And so, how do you scale without losing the integrity of your product or the integrity of your brand?
Right.
And so, our popcorn is in such demand because we've been doing it stovetop, the old-fashioned way. It's pretty labor-intensive, and so it's hard to keep folks who are willing to do it.
Right.
So we said, hey, let's try a machine like they have in the movies and movie
Right.
theaters. Right? And so we've tried that the past maybe 2.5, 3 weeks, only to find that it has compromised the flavor. Although slight, it's enough for those who know our popcorn.
Right.
It's enough to know, like, hey, this isn't it.
This isn't right. Right.
And so I had to, whereas I started off the day with a fast, I have to taste to be sure it's what it's supposed to be sure what everybody's getting is what I would myself eat.
Right. Yeah.
And we take it one step further, while there are a lot of people who are really good with the food that they sell, our destination is deliciousness.
Right.
Like,
nice.
With flavor. You're going to get the nutrition and you're going to get the deliciousness.
It definitely works because every time I go, there's no lines around the corner. So that must for years, and it's never stopped. COVID, rain, snow, sunshine, hailstorms. There are always lines around the corner for your restaurant. So.
It's a blessing and a phenomenon. It just speaks to the fact, though, that our people are waking up.
Yes, definitely.
And whether they want to be vegan or not, for me, that's not my concern. My concern is to fulfill our mission statement, which is to be a bridge, assisting people in getting from where they are to a state of optimal health using our food.
Right.
And that's fresh, raw, locally grown, organic, non-GMO, vegan, and transitional foods whenever available. And I have to put that clause on this, whenever available, because let's face it, we don't grow it.
Right. Yeah.
So we can't always control our food.
Right. Exactly. That's very true.
Supply chain is real.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can get it, that's what we go for. When
so,
we our best.
Right. So you have created this wrap that is so nutritious, so famous, so necessary within the community of people in Atlanta. And I know that you're a very spiritual person. I mean, you talked about your day. You start your day in prayer, in meditation, in yoga. So, as I always say, let's drop in. Let's just drop a bit deeper, with this conversation, and let's talk about how you actually came about to come up with this recipe for the wrap. I know it's a spiritual phenomenon. I know it's a spiritual story. So let's just drop in and talk about how spirit, how the source contacted you and gave you the recipe to save lives. How did this happen?
So that's a really powerful one.
I said we were going to drop in, right? So let's drop in. Let's go there. Right.
I'll go all the way back to the beginning of my introduction to raw food. Back in the mid 80s, I think it was 84, I went to a conference in Mexico, and that's where I met Arisleif, who is one of the founding fathers of the raw food movement. He and Dr. Kwatamani started around the same time back in the mid 70s. And partnered, although initially they started separately. Then they partnered and then went on to spread the raw food liberty throughout the country. Both of them are living out of the country now. Dr. Latham is in Panama and Dr. Kwatamani is in Belize. Both their environments are much more conducive for raw food liberty than the industrialized cities. So there's that. So I studied with Aris back in '84. Learned how to prepare the raw foods, but at the time I was still eating fish and chicken, and I was a hardcore sugar addict. I was hoping that one day I could be a vegetarian. A raw foodist was like, to me, out of my realm, because I was in school at the time. I was a single mom of 3. And I worked for myself, and I didn't have time to spend the hours in the kitchen that were required the way that Aris taught.
That were
so, I dibbled and dabbled throughout the years, but I never committed to it, at first. When I moved to Atlanta in '88, I became a vegan because I married my second husband, and he was a Nazarite.
to it.
So I took the vow of the Nazarite with him, and we became very strict vegans to the extent that we didn't even eat fermented foods.
Okay.
So fast forward 20 years later, I began to discover that I had the onset of arthritis. I was waking up with stiffness in my fingers, stiffness and pain.
That I had.
And this goes back to the hair care days when I was and braids and such. And, that was like a death sentence. I was like, no, I can't have this. So a friend of mine who is a raw foodist, he's an MD and a naturopath, told me that I was eating too much starch. So instead, I went for a week to experiment. I went for a week to see if what he was saying was true. And it was. After a week of no starches in my diet, the pain and stiffness left, and it's never come back.
Wow.
The first point. And what had happened was I had become a starchitarian. And this is what happens to a lot of people who embark on a plant-based diet. They try to fill up. When the meat is gone, they feel a void. And they don't know how to segue from that into just more plants and roughage. So they fill up on carbs.
Right.
Which, and typically, in the case of myself, I wasn't drinking enough water and I wasn't eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables. So as a result, the starches were turning to paste in my body.
Okay.
Well, that's when I began to commit to the raw living. I said, well, let me see if I try this for a year. Let me see what will happen. And so I went into it saying I would be 98% raw. And I said it that way because, again, in having been vegan for 20 years and witnessing both ends of the spectrum, the sad diet as well as the extremes of the healthy livid, I said, okay, what is something that I can sustain? Well, when it gets cold in Atlanta, which it does, I sometimes want to be able to eat hot food. I may want soup. I may want a veggie.
Right.
And I don't want to feel guilty about it. And I don't want anyone to try to make me feel guilty about it either. So I said, okay, I'll be 98% raw and just see what happens.
Right.
So that got started on that. And in so doing, there were really only one or two books that Aris had created that had raw food recipes in it. And many of his things were very tropical. So I had to dig deep into my own remembrance and love of food and create a lot of the things that I liked hot, cold, without heat.
Oh, amazing.
The table salad, which came before the wrap, came about with me. Actually, I wish it could have been some fancy story, but I was invited to a party, a potluck.
Yeah.
I was running late because I was doing hair and it ran over. So I ran in my kitchen and just started grabbing stuff out the cabinet as my intuition was just guiding me. I was just grabbing things, throwing it in the bowl, and I made this salad, which just tasted phenomenal to me. So I run to I get there and all the other food is gone, but I leave the salad in a big bowl and I go and sit down because they're having spoken word. Well, I began to notice that folks were coming in there to the spoken word session with these bowls of salad. And they were just raving about it. And somebody said to me, girl, you better get in there and get that salad before it's gone. I was like, somebody else must have brought some more food.
Right.
So I see someone scooping the last bit of my salad onto their plate. And I was like, oh my God, this is a hit. But I didn't know if I could recreate. So
That's hilarious.
that's where the prayer came in, because the next week I was invited to another party and I wanted to bring it. And so I went deep into prayer.
Can I recreate this?
Right. How can I recreate this? So I just went into a stage of woo, 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 woo.
Right.
Literally. And, so that I could get the inspiration, get the momentum going.
Right.
And I was able to recreate it. And so from there, the other dishes grew, and they just were based on inspiration, like the mango mushroom stew.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that I was inspired to do, because I remember going to a restaurant when I was a child that my parents would take us to, and they served Polynesian food. So I remembered some of my favorite combinations.
Right.
Together. Our sweet coconut corn was a combination of two of my favorite dishes that my mom made. And that was what is it? She made cream corn, and she made sweet corn. So I thought, well, how can I make the cream? And then I thought, coconut milk.
Right.
And then, well, okay, now it's yellow and white. Now what? So I added agave. I tried honey. It was the flavor was overpowering. I tried brown sugar. The flavor was overpowering. The agave worked very well. It's a low glycemic.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't or lower a person's blood sugar.
Right.
And the flavor complements your other flavors. So that worked. So then I said, well, it needs some green. So I'm an artist by professional training. I got my degree in fine arts. So
That's another one to add to the list. Right.
I was already utilizing the best quality foods, because I was already buying my food organic. And so I wasn't concerned about that part. What I was concerned about was, did it taste good, and did it look beautiful?
Right.
Did it look exciting? Was it popping? And so with that in mind, I really used color therapy in accordance with the chakras.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to inspire me. So I was like, okay, well, I have this yellow and white going on. What does it need? It needs some fire, some pizzazz. So I said, okay, red or orange. So I experimented with red and yellow bell pepper, and neither one of those worked. So I had some red Thai chili peppers on the counter. I grabbed those, that's it. So I put the red Thai chili peppers in there, cut a quarter of an inch. Why? So that folks with the seasoning could marinate, but also if people didn't want the heat of that pepper, they could pick it out.
Right.
That's eater-friendly food. I'm a foodie at heart.
Well, I can see. I mean, I like I use the term cooking with the grandmothers.
Yes.
This is when you're in the kitchen and things just happen. You just, when I'm cooking and I just put some seasoning on, I'm just like, okay, how much should I put in? And it's just enough, and it tastes good. Do you think that when you are making these recipes, when you're coming up with them, was you working with spirit? Were you working with yourself? Were you working with grandmothers, or were you working with all the above?
All the above.
Okay.
Because I was putting in 5 circles of this.
Right.
And 2 dashes of that, a pinch of this.
Right.
Taking along the way, right?
Right.
And I would talk to the food. And
right.
I asked them, what did it want to be?
Oh.
How did it want to manifest itself?
That's deep. Right.
And I was inspired from some of my customers.
Right.
For example, Pupu Lala, he was allergic to the nutritional yeast. So he said, how can I get your salad without that? So I made it with an avocado base, and I call it my a la Pupu Lala. I named it after him.
So I've got to ask you the question. I think you answered this before, but I'm going to ask it anyway for everyone on the live chat. It was like, my favorite rap is the punani.
Yes.
So what's the story behind that? The Punani wrap.
Okay.
I like it mild, by the way, not hot, but mild. Okay.
Well, so interestingly enough, during that season of my life, I had taken a vow of celibacy for 18 months. My yoga instructor told me that if I wanted to change my relationship karma, I needed to heal my womb space and abstain from sex for at least 18 months. And I had never done that.
Right.
And that was frightening on a level. But I said, okay, I'll try it, because I was just coming out of a relationship that was a very hard breakup. And I had become a serial monogamist. I didn't want that anymore in my life. And so my yoga instructor said, okay, well, recommit yourself to yoga, transform that energy, and transform the sexual energy into spiritual and healing energy using the tantric practices. So I said, okay. So I took it on. And I am a very passionate and sensual person. So it's like, what do I do with energy? So I used it to create. I poured my passion into the food. So literally what inspires people is that it reignites them with their own passion.
Right.
So there's always been a playfulness. I have a sense of humor, and there were a couple of customers that I had that would get the plates, because I had plates before I had the wraps for 3 years. Plates only before the wraps were invented. So I would put the kale and the couscous and the corn right next to each other. Well, they asked if I would put the kale first, then the couscous, and then the corn on top, and to put a lot of the coconut on top of that. And when I tasted it that way, I was like, oh my God, this is like a pie. And, there's a term called tumescence. When you're really feeling the fullness of your own sensual energy, it's like the elders would say, girl or boy, you smelling yourself, And you remember how, when you first come into puberty?
Right, yeah. Right.
And so it was like that, I was feeling myself, the fullness of my sensual power. And I said, ooh, this tastes like I feel. This is like some punani pie. And so we started calling it the punani pie, because other two customers are goddesses in their own right.
Right.
And so they completely relate to what I was saying. And that's what we started to call it. So when the wraps came along, initially they were the OG wraps, the original kale wraps. And then folks start asking, well, can you put the corn and the couscous on there too? And so I said, well, sure, why not? So I did, and that's how
asking, well, can you?
This is our slogan. And, why is it called the punani wrap?
Why is it wrap?
Because like all good punani, it's hot and spicy, succulent and juicy, like every woman wants to be, and like every man wants to experience, and it keeps coming back for more.
Well, okay, you answered my question, definitely, and to a lot of people on the chat as well. Everyone was like raving about the punani pie, the punani wrap, and they didn't know this story. So we've just informed a bunch of people on the chat where this all came from.
And it's fun, and it's our most popular wrap.
Right. For me, anyway, I always get it.
And everyone that comes to our doors, absolutely down. The next one is the OG, then the dat-ish. Then I'd say it would go between the south of the border and the Big Yoshi.
Right.
And then people come up with a host of their own creative combinations. Like my daughter created one called South of the Border, which is the south of the border with corn, coconut corn added to it.
Yeah, and Queens. Saying that you'll be full all day, and you most certainly will with these wraps. I mean, I just eat half, one day and the other half the next day. I mean, it's so filling. So, definitely value for money.
That's the goal. As a food foodie and eating out, as someone who
creative
prepared food all the
combinations. Like
time.
my
You have children, you have to make
daughter
your own
created
food.
one
Right.
I mean, I lost the food, and so
Nice.
when I would go to these restaurants and
Which-
they would charge an arm and a leg,
Yeah.
and I was still hungry.
Right.
I was insulted.
Water.
And so I said, I want to make sure that we're known for not only giving people their money's worth, but letting them feel the investment
Right.
in themselves.
In themselves.
You know,
Yeah.
But that's the
So important.
And felt the myth that raw food
that's
was
the goal.
more than rabbit.
Oh,
And
Right.
you really could get full off of it.
Definitely.
as
Prepared
a
correctly.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. So, you know, when people are in town, I mean, I've got friends in New Orleans. And whenever they're in town, they'll be like, you know,
in themselves.
before we go, we're stopping off at Tasilli's. We're going to buy some wraps. You know, we're going to have one way back, and you know, we're going to have a couple for the next day or the day after. Put them in the fridge. Is there any plans to take your restaurant to different locations? Because like New York or LA or somewhere, you know, because I'm sure whenever people are in town, they're like, oh, I'm going to Tasilli's. First stop off, or last thing before they do is they go to Tasilli's. What do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. That's the goal, right? When the vision was given to me, it was of a global franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2020, we were poised to open up 4 new locations. One in Pittsburgh Yard, one in San Diego, one in what do you call that, over there in the Lakewood area in the Upbeat building. And we also had the business over at Unity and Coffee, which is now White Cafe, but it used to be Cafe 640.
Right. Yeah.
And so
we did a party there. Right.
Absolutely. And so we had all these things going, and then COVID hit. And then, at the beginning of the second week of COVID, I found that my company was being embezzled.
Yes.
For no small amount of money.
Right.
So it's taken us 4 years to recoup that $400,000.
Wow. Yeah.
And to put things in place so it never happens again.
Right. Yeah.
We established our credibility with some of the alphabet government
right
that we have to adhere to, and it's been a lot. So folks have been patiently waiting.
Yeah.
And what we've been doing is to make sure that we can have Tasilli's Raw Reality in a box.
Yeah.
Meaning that we can just pick it up and put it here, pick it up, put it there,
right.
Wherever we want it to go.
A real franchise, Yeah.
And so we're at the stage right now where we're putting together our training manual.
Right.
That no matter where we are
right now, where we're putting together our training manual,
franchise brand form, and duplicate ourselves.
Well, I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. So, you know, getting ready to launch in 2020, and it didn't happen because of the people, you know, getting into your business, stealing your money, COVID, and all these other things made you step back and go through some more lessons. And now you're coming out in a much better and stronger way. Yeah.
It's so true. I'm glad you said it that way too, because, you know, I'm a believer that we attract our situations in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so someone might say, well, who would want to deliberately attract an embezzlement?
Right.
Well, no, deliberately or intentionally attracts tragedy in their life.
Right.
However, unintentionally, we make choices that leave vulnerable, or that we cases where we didn't listen to our intuition or our gut, and its spirit said go right. We decided to be honorary, you know.
Yes.
And
so
what happened for me when that happened, it was my upper level management.
Mm-hmm.
I had to like really sit back and ask myself, okay, what is the lesson here? What was my part in it? And my part in it was that I trusted blindly.
Yeah.
I would never recommend that anyone trust blindly. We have to trust,
Yeah.
but
not blindly. Right. Yeah.
You have to inspect what you expect.
Yeah.
Now, I had to be able to move in grace with myself because I had to acknowledge that, well, there were things that I didn't know that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I was self-employed before I had this business, and I was working with hair, not food.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Different world.
There's a lot to learn, right? There's a lot to learn.
And if you don't know what you don't know, how can you then ask the right questions
Yeah.
or put the right things in place
Yeah.
so that you can make the right moves,
Mm-hmm.
right? So with that in mind, that. But then there was another really hard look I had to have with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, well, Tasilli, weren't there signs? Absolutely, there were signs.
Yeah.
And I ignored them.
Yeah.
I ignored them for two reasons. One, because I was absolutely burnt out, right? So that was the one main reason.
Yeah.
So the two reasons why I was burnt out was one, because I had a lot of family things going on across the country in California. So I was flying back and forth for about 4 years, constantly, several times a year, and staying for long periods of time. So I was essentially allowing these folks to run my business.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's for those people listening, I mean, this is really good information for those of you.
Sorry about the sound. Sorry.
That's okay. For those of you listening, this is really good information for those of you who are entrepreneurs and who have your own business, because this is really a masterclass, because you're hearing it from Tasilli herself of all the experiences that she's been through. You know, it's not all glory and, you know, just like having a great time in the kitchen and whatever. There's a lot of hard work and lack of sleep and stress that goes along with it, you know, and hearing how Tasilli navigated through those hard times is like, you know, you don't hear these stories every day. So, you know,
It's true. The burnout is real. I'm glad you feel that way, because that was the other thing. I got to a place where I didn't care. There was a part of it that I didn't have anything left in me.
Right.
To care.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where the blind trust came in.
Yeah.
And it was a extremely expensive and painful lesson. But I talked to other business owners who are very successful. You know, they said, "Oh, well, welcome to the club. You just passed your first hardcore initiation."
That's right. That's
I
right.
was like, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You know, one restaurateur told me he's always being embezzled,
right,
and he just builds that into his budgeting, that he
right.
knows there's theft.
This is going to steal. Right.
So, you know, I'm learning. Well, what do you do about it? Well, for one thing, my family, when I told them how much money had been embezzled in what that we could at least track for 1 year, they were like, "Oh wow, this is more than mom's little dream. This is like a real business."
Yeah, exactly. You know.
And so my family got involved.
Yeah, and you know, the hardest thing in business that I've experienced is finding the right team. You know, you know, people are, you know, here today, gone tomorrow. People, you know, you put trust in them and they don't live up to your expectations, because no one's going to work as hard as you and no one's going to have as much passion as you if you're starting a business. So, you know, finding the right team is always the hardest thing, and to get gems to work with you is truly a blessing. So let's skip. Let's move on a bit. Let's move on to, because I know you've got an event coming up, and is it the Wonderful Wizards of Raw Food Extravaganza?
Yes.
Right. When is that? Tell us about that. When's that happening, so everyone can know to dip in?
Yes, that starts May, the end of the month, the 31st.
Okay.
And and the 2nd of June. So it's always the first weekend of June.
Okay.
And we start off with what we call the libation, and that's a concert by the water. We typically have a local park. That will be determined on the day of. And then it's a free concert, and we usually open with libation. We have a community African dance class that my daughter leads. So
right.
We're actually keeping the culture alive, our African dance culture alive,
right.
by actually doing something that's meaningful with the dance outside class and performance. And we have a sound bowl, and we have the concert. The following day, from 2 to about 11, 12, we have speaker and entertainment in the backyard of the restaurant, and that's on Saturday, Sunday. Our theme this year is food justice and politics. And I really want people to get in